The room that should never have been opened. Room 428. Hello, I'm Alex, and I'm about to take you on a journey into one of the most chilling tales I've ever encountered. It's a story that will make you question the very nature of reality, and perhaps make you think twice about your next college dorm assignment. So, dim the lights, settle in, and prepare yourself for the haunting tale of Room 428 at Ohio University. Our story begins with a young freshman, eager to start their college journey. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah had just arrived at Ohio University, her mind filled with dreams of new friendships, academic challenges, and the excitement of living away from home for the first time. Little did she know that her assigned room would become the stuff of nightmares. As Sarah approached Wilson Hall, she couldn't help but notice the imposing structure. The old brick building seemed to loom over her, its windows like dark, watchful eyes. She shook off the feeling of unease, attributing it to first-day jitters. After all, this was to be her home for the next year. Sarah made her way to the fourth floor, her footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. The carpet muffled her steps as she searched for her room. 426, 427, and there it was, room 428. She hesitated for a moment, her hand hovering over the doorknob. Something felt off, but she pushed the feeling aside and stepped into her new home. The room was unremarkable. A standard dorm room with 2 beds, 2 desks, and a large mirror on the far wall. Sarah's roommate hadn't arrived yet, so she had the place to herself. As she began to unpack, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. Every time she glanced at the mirror, she expected to see something, someone. But it was always just her own reflection staring back. That first night, Sarah struggled to sleep. The room felt wrong, too cold in some spots, too warm in others. And the silence, it was deafening. Just as she was about to drift off, she heard it, a whisper, so faint she almost missed it. "Get out," it seemed to say. Sarah bolted upright, her heart pounding, but the room was empty, save for her own ragged breathing. Days passed, and strange occurrences became the norm. Sarah would leave her textbooks neatly stacked on her desk, only to return and find them scattered on the floor. Her clothes would be rearranged in her closet, and always, there was that feeling of being watched. One night, as Sarah was studying late, she saw it. A dark figure standing in the corner of the room. She blinked, and it was gone. But she knew, deep in her bones, that it had been there. The next morning, she asked her roommate if she had seen anything strange. The look of confusion on her roommate's face said it all. Sarah didn't have a roommate. She had been alone in room 428 all along. Desperate for proof, Sarah set up her phone to record the room while she slept. But each morning, she'd wake to find the footage corrupted, the video a mess of static and distorted images. In one particularly chilling clip, she could make out a dark shape moving across the room, pausing at the foot of her bed. The audio was nothing but a low, guttural growl. As the days wore on, Sarah's fear grew. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The whispers in the night became louder, more insistent. "Leave," they'd hiss. "This isn't your place." Sarah would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, too terrified to close her eyes. And then there was the mirror, that large, ornate mirror that dominated the wall. Sarah began to avoid looking at it, convinced that she'd see something, someone, other than herself reflected in its surface. But she couldn't escape its presence, its watchful gaze. One night, as Sarah tossed and turned in her bed, she heard a sound that chilled her to her very core, the slow, deliberate sound of fingernails dragging across glass. She turned, her eyes wide with terror, to see long, deep scratches appearing on the mirror's surface, as if some unseen force was clawing its way out. With a deafening crack, the mirror shattered. Shards of glass rained down, and in that moment, Sarah saw something. A face, twisted and inhuman, grinning at her from every broken piece. She screamed, a sound of pure primal terror, and fled the room. Sarah ran, her bare feet slapping against the cold floor of the hallway. She didn't stop until she reached the resident advisor's room, pounding on the door with frantic energy. When the sleepy RA opened the door, Sarah burst into tears, her words tumbling out in a confused jumble. The RA listened, his face growing pale as Sarah recounted her experiences. When she finished, he sat her down, his voice grave. "Sarah," he said, "room 428 has been sealed off for years. No one was supposed to be living there." The truth, when it came, was more horrifying than anything Sarah could have imagined. Years ago, room 428 had been the site of a terrible tragedy. A group of students dabbling in the occult had performed a ritual that went horribly, terribly wrong. The room had been sealed ever since, declared off limits to all students. But somehow, through some administrative error, or perhaps something more sinister, Sarah had been assigned to the room that should never have been opened. The room that had been waiting, all these years, for someone to cross its threshold. As Sarah sat there, shaking and crying, she realized the true horror of her situation. She hadn't just been living in a haunted room. She had been living in a place where the veil between worlds had been torn, where something dark and ancient had been waiting for a chance to break through. In the days that followed, university officials launched an investigation, but when they went to room 428, they found nothing. An empty room, dusty and untouched. The mirror on the wall was intact, showing no signs of the violent shattering Sarah had witnessed. Sarah never returned to Wilson Hall. She transferred to another university, trying to put the nightmare behind her. But sometimes, in her dreams, she finds herself back in room 428, standing before that mirror, watching as a dark shape slowly emerges from its depths. And she wakes, screaming, to the sound of whispers in the night. "Welcome back," they seem to say. "We've been waiting for you." So the next time you're assigned a dorm room, take a moment to consider its history, because you never know what might be waiting for you behind that closed door, what secrets the walls might hold, what horrors might be lurking just out of sight in the reflection of a mirror. This has been the tale of room 428, Ohio University's most haunted dorm room. A room that should have remained sealed, and a reminder that some doors are better left unopened. Sleep well, dear listeners, and may your reflections always be your own. Hey there, friends. Before we begin, I want you to imagine yourself in my shoes for a moment. Picture this. You're on vacation in Louisiana, excited to explore some of the local history and maybe experience a little southern charm. That's exactly where I found myself last summer, and let me tell you, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I've always been fascinated by old houses and their stories, so when I heard about the Myrtles Plantation tour, I jumped at the chance. This place is known as one of America's most haunted homes, with a history stretching back to 1796. Now, I'm not usually one for ghost stories, but I figured it'd be a fun way to spend an afternoon. Little did I know, this seemingly innocent decision would lead to the most terrifying experience of my life. The day started out normal enough. I joined a group of about 15 other tourists, all of us eager to see inside this grand antebellum mansion. Our guide, a friendly older woman named Margaret, led us through the main floor, regaling us with tales of the plantation's past owners and the tragic events that had unfolded within these walls. As we moved from room to room, I found myself falling behind the group. The house was just so fascinating, with its ornate furnishings and centuries-old artifacts. I wanted to soak in every detail. That's when I noticed something odd. In one of the upstairs hallways, partially hidden behind a faded velvet curtain, was what looked like the outline of a door. Now I know what you're thinking. Don't do it! Don't go exploring on your own in a haunted house. But curiosity got the better of me. I glanced around to make sure no one was watching, then quietly slipped behind the curtain. Sure enough, there was a small wooden door. It looked ancient, with peeling paint and rusted hinges. My heart was pounding as I reached for the handle, half expecting it to be locked. To my surprise, it opened with a low creak. Beyond was a narrow staircase leading up into darkness. I hesitated for a moment, knowing I should rejoin the tour. But something compelled me forward. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and began to climb. The stairs groaned under my weight, and I could feel the dust tickling my nose. As I reached the top, I found myself in a large, musty attic space. Shafts of afternoon sunlight filtered through small, grimy windows, illuminating swirling motes of dust. The room was cluttered with old furniture draped in sheets, trunks, and boxes of what looked like forgotten belongings. But there, in the center of the room, was something that made my blood run cold. Seated in an ornate rocking chair was a porcelain doll. Now, I've never been a fan of dolls to begin with, but this one was different. It was about the size of a small child, dressed in a faded Victorian-style dress. Its face was eerily lifelike, with glass eyes that seemed to follow me as I moved. I stood there, frozen, staring at this doll. There was something deeply unsettling about it, beyond just the usual creepiness of old toys. Its painted lips were curved in the slightest smile, as if it knew some secret I didn't. Against my better judgment, I took a step closer. That's when I heard it. A soft, high-pitched giggle echoed through the attic. I spun around, my heart racing, but I was alone. When I looked back at the doll, I could have sworn its head had turned slightly to face me more directly. Panic started to set in. I needed to get out of there now. I fumbled with my phone, determined to at least get a picture of this bizarre scene before I left. As I raised the camera, another giggle rang out, louder this time. And then, with a resounding bang, the attic door slammed shut behind me. I nearly dropped my phone as I ran to the door, yanking on the handle. It wouldn't budge. Tears of fear welled up in my eyes as I pounded on the wood, calling out for help. But the tour group was long gone, probably not even aware I was missing. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few minutes, I managed to force the door open. I practically fell down the stairs in my rush to get out, not even bothering to close the attic behind me. I rejoined the tour group just as they were finishing up, making up some excuse about getting lost in the gardens. As we left the plantation, I tried to convince myself that it had all been my imagination. The giggles, the doll moving. It was just an old house playing tricks on me, right? But that night in my hotel room, as I scrolled through the photos on my phone, I realized this nightmare was far from over. The first photo showed the attic, as I remembered it, dusty and dim, with the doll seated in its chair about 15 feet away from where I stood. But in the next photo, taken just seconds later, the doll was closer, much closer. Its glassy eyes were looking directly into the camera, that slight smile now a full grin. My hands shaking, I kept swiping. In each successive photo, the doll was nearer, its expression growing more sinister. In the final image, all I could see was its face, filling the entire frame. Those painted eyes now looked alive with malevolence. I deleted the photos immediately, my mind racing. How was this possible? I knew that doll hadn't moved while I was in that attic, yet the evidence was undeniable. Something truly supernatural had occurred, and I had the sinking feeling it wasn't over. The next morning, I cut my vacation short and flew home, desperate to put as much distance between myself and that plantation as possible. But as the days passed, I began to notice strange things happening in my own house. It started small. Objects would be in different places than where I left them. I'd hear faint giggling coming from empty rooms. At first, I tried to rationalize it away. Maybe I was just forgetful, or the neighbors' kids were playing outside. But then, things escalated. One night I woke up to find all the lights in my house turned on, even though I distinctly remembered shutting them off before bed. Another time I came home from work to find every single drawer and cabinet in my kitchen wide open. But the worst, the absolute worst, was when I started seeing glimpses of something out of the corner of my eye. A small, child-sized figure darting just out of sight. The swish of an old-fashioned dress disappearing around a corner. And always, always, that high-pitched giggle. I'm at my wit's end, friends. I haven't had a good night's sleep in weeks. I jump at every sound, convinced that doll is lurking somewhere in my house, waiting to reveal itself. I've considered moving, but deep down, I know it wouldn't matter. Whatever I unleashed in that attic, whatever attached itself to me, it's not bound by physical distance. As I sit here recording this, pouring out my story to you, I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. That somewhere in this room, a pair of glassy eyes is fixed on me and painted lips are curved in a knowing smile. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to stop this. All I know is that my life will never be the same after what I experienced in that attic. So please, I'm begging you. If you ever find yourself on a tour of an old, supposedly haunted house, stick with the group. Don't go exploring on your own, because you never know what might be waiting for you behind that hidden door and what might follow you home. And now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go. I just heard a faint creaking sound coming from my closet, like someone gently rocking in a chair. Wish me luck, friends. I have a feeling I'm going to need it. The forest was silent, unnaturally so. No birds chirped, no insects buzzed, just an eerie stillness that seemed to swallow every sound. I'm Alex, and I never thought I'd find myself standing at the edge of what many consider to be the world's most haunted forest. But here I was, staring into the depths of Hoya Bachu in Romania, a place shrouded in mystery and fear. As a travel vlogger, I'd explored my fair share of supposedly haunted locations, abandoned asylums, forgotten cemeteries, you name it. But something about Hoya Bachu felt different. The trees themselves seemed to lean away from the forest's heart, their gnarled branches twisting in unnatural angles. I'd arrived in the nearby town of Cluj-Napoca earlier that day, my camera gear packed and ready for what I hoped would be my most viral video yet. But as I asked locals for directions to the forest, their reactions were unsettling. An old woman grabbed my arm, her eyes wide with fear. "You must not go there, especially not at night," she warned, her voice barely above a whisper. "People disappear in those woods, and sometimes we hear screams." I laughed it off, assuring her I'd be fine. But as I drove towards Hoya Bachu, her words echoed in my mind. The sun was already low on the horizon when I parked my rental car at the forest's edge. I should have waited until morning, but my eagerness got the better of me. As I stepped onto the leaf-strewn path, a chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. The trees loomed overhead, their branches forming a canopy so thick it seemed to absorb what little remaining daylight there was. I switched on my camera, narrating as I walked deeper into the forest. "Hey guys, it's Alex, and I'm about to enter Hoya Bachu, Romania's infamous Bermuda Triangle. Let's see if we can spot any ghosts, shall we?" My forced cheerfulness felt hollow in the oppressive silence. I tried to focus on capturing good footage, but with each step, an inexplicable sense of dread grew in the pit of my stomach. About half an hour in, I came across a small clearing. The trees here were even more twisted, forming almost perfect circles. It was as if they had been shaped by some unseen force. I panned my camera slowly, trying to capture the eerie beauty of the scene. That's when I heard it. A whisper, so faint I almost missed it. I spun around, heart racing. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding small and afraid. No response. I played it off for the camera. "Looks like the ghosts are a bit shy tonight, folks, but don't worry, we'll keep exploring." As I continued deeper into the forest, the whispers grew more frequent. Sometimes they seemed to come from right behind me, other times from far in the distance. But every time I turned to look, there was nothing there. The fog started rolling in, thick and unnatural. It coiled around the trees like living tendrils, obscuring my vision. I checked my watch, 8:47 p.m. I decided to film for another 15 minutes before heading back. But something strange was happening to time itself. My watch seemed to be moving erratically, the seconds ticking by at an uneven pace. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. I could almost make out words now, but in a language I didn't understand. Panic began to set in. I turned to retrace my steps, but in the fog, every direction looked the same. The trees seemed to shift and move when I wasn't looking directly at them. My breath came in short gasps as I spun around, trying to find the path. That's when I saw it. A figure just at the edge of my vision, tall and impossibly thin, with limbs that seemed too long for its body. I caught a glimpse of glowing eyes before it disappeared into the mist. I ran. Branches whipped at my face as I stumbled through the underbrush, the whispers now a cacophony of otherworldly voices. My foot caught on a root, and I fell hard, my camera clattering to the ground beside me. As my head hit the forest floor, darkness engulfed me. I don't know how long I was unconscious. When I came to, the forest was silent once more. The fog had lifted, and pale moonlight filtered through the trees. I reached for my camera with shaking hands, but when I tried to play back the footage, the screen was blank. Every single file had been erased. I checked my watch. 3:22 a.m. Somehow, over 6 hours had passed, yet it felt like only minutes. My clothes were damp with dew and leaves clung to my hair. How had I not woken up? What happened during those lost hours? Stumbling to my feet, I made my way back towards where I thought I'd left my car. By some miracle, I found the path and eventually emerged from the tree line. The sight of my rental vehicle had never been so welcome. As I drove back to town, my mind raced. What had I experienced in Hoya, Bachu? Were the stories true? I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me out of that forest, something ancient and malevolent. Back in my hotel room, I tried to piece together what had happened. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw that impossibly tall figure and those glowing eyes. Sleep eluded me. In the days that followed, I noticed strange things. Objects moving when I wasn't looking, whispers at the edge of my hearing. And sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I'd catch a glimpse of something tall and thin, watching me from the shadows. I left Romania as quickly as I could, but I know now that it doesn't matter how far I run. Whatever I encountered in Hoya Bachu that night, whatever chose me, it's with me now. Always watching, always waiting. So I'm sharing this story as a warning. If you ever find yourself near Hoya Bachu, heed the locals' advice. Don't enter the forest, especially not at night, because some things once seen can never be unseen. And some places, once they've marked you, never truly let you go. As I sit here recording this video, I can't help but wonder, is it watching me even now? And more terrifyingly, is it watching you too?